for us. So today I really want to look at being able to get a bigger view of a toxic cycle that you might be in. This is so important because let's say I'm in a river and I'm being overwhelmed by a river and I'm trying to get out. I can't really see any exits. And sometimes I only see the exit when I've passed it. And now it's not an option for me anymore. And I think sometimes in relationships that can happen. You can't really see the exits to the dysfunction you're both in that moment until, the moment's passed and it's not an option anymore. And all you do is keep struggling, keep fighting, keep struggling, keep fighting, but you're really fighting to get out, but truly you're fighting each other. So when we do some of these exercises, like what is found in Have You Had Enough? That is sort of the same as if I were able to get out of the river and now I can look way down the river and I can sort of plot out exit points, right? Plus, if I'm having conversations with people who have already been in that same river, they're going to be able to tell me, oh yeah, well, if you see like 3 big logs in a row, right after that, it gets a bit shallow, so just swim to the left and then you can just actually walk out of it. So that is the beauty of being able to see further down that river, and it's the same in a toxic cycle. So today is a little exercise of how to get that bigger view, which is ultimately going to help you find the exits, because that's what we want to do. We want to stop being in that pattern, in that cycle, and be able to exit and stay out of it. And then just like the last video, if you haven't seen that one, you can go back and watch it. That's talking about, having those exit points is going to help you understand if you were just in a toxic cycle with this person and it can get better, or are you actually in a toxic relationship and it's only going to keep getting worse. Really hard to answer that question just sometimes based off the information we have. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at, or the one thing we're going to really talk about today, is something that I called in the book your 4 W's. These are the 4 W's, which you've probably heard many times in different types of contexts. Today, we're using it for the purpose of being able to have that bigger view of what the toxic cycle is. Not only that, I think it's worth mentioning, you could be in a toxic cycle with one of your children. And I think that does happen often for many reasons. So it's not just a romantic relationship. It could be with a child who is under the age of 18. It could be with an adult child. So it's really applies to any relationship where you feel like you have the same fight over and over and over, or it's coming at the same times every single week or every single month, right? There's a pattern. So anytime it's a cycle, it means there's going to be a pattern to it. So that's the power that we have to be able to identify it. Okay, so here are the 4 W's. They are who, what, where, and when. So let's just take a look at who. So you're going to use the who to be able to learn more about your toxic cycle, to get that bigger view so that you can find the exits. So the first one is look at who you, and by the way, this is from page 7. You can find this on Amazon. Have You Had Enough? You want to look at who you or the other person in the toxic cycle were in contact prior to that cycle starting. So who were you just talking to? Who were they just talking to? Who in the last few hours or maybe a day were they just hanging around? Who were you just hanging around? It's not to say that it's that person's fault, but it's just giving you information, because if it is a pattern, there's a good chance that every time this cycle comes through, they were just with that person or you were just with that person. Okay, number 2 is the what. What was going on right before the toxic cycle occurred? So were bills due? Was it the end of the month? Was it the middle of the month? Was it a holiday? Was it a Sunday, right? Just what was going on? What were you both doing right before that cycle, right? What were you and the other party doing or supposed to be doing after the cycle? Maybe the cycle came right before there was something you were supposed to do. So maybe you were heading out the door to go to Sunday dinner, or maybe, you were heading out the door to go see someone or go grocery shopping or anything. It could be anything. Just try to think, what were we doing right before, or what were we about to go do right before it started? Remember, this is just giving you more information on your toxic cycle. The third thing is the where. So where is the toxic cycle occurring? Is it usually in the kitchen? Is it in the car? Is it in the bedroom? At which location does the cycle happen? So you're wanting to ask yourself, every time the cycle occurs, most times, this is the place we're at. So it could actually be in a restaurant even. I know someone who, it did happen every time they went to a restaurant. Or it could be maybe you guys get into the cycle right before bed. Maybe it's right before bed on a weekend. Maybe it's Sunday dinner at the kitchen table. Just really writing down, where are we? Here's the other thing. When you're mapping out your toxic cycle, which the book will explain, and also there's a PDF on my website that has just all the steps condensed into one great little PDF that you can fly right through and get so much information from. It does ask you to just use the last event. So you're not trying to think of all the times you were in this toxic cycle, what every single time looked like. You're just taking the last time you felt really overwhelmed and fed up, like really hopeless in an argument, really defeated, really starting to question, should I stay or should I go, right? You just take that last incident, and that's what you're using information from to map out your toxic cycle. Not all of them, because there's too many little nuances that are gonna, kind of be confusing. So you just use the very last incident. Okay. The fourth one is when. When is the cycle occurring? Is it in the evening? Is it in the afternoon? Is it in the mornings? So which part of the month does the toxic cycle occur? Is it on a particular day of the week you're entering the cycle, or does it happen on a day like payday? Maybe every time someone gets paid, there's a big old toxic cycle that you both enter into. Or maybe it's, for whatever reason, the very middle of the month. Maybe it's the very beginning. Maybe it's the end of the month. So just try to think of when, even down to the time of day. Do we seem to do this in the mornings? Do we seem to do this in the evenings? In the example that I mapped out, it's of a father-son example, and it was every time the kid came back from his mother's home, because the parents were divorced. So every time the kid came back to the home, that's when they would jump into their toxic cycle. And it was a bummer because it would take almost the entire week they were together to kind of get over it. And just when they were starting to do good, then the kid, of course, would go back to his mother's. And then when he came back, they would jump right back into it and start again, spend the whole rest of the time to repair it, finally get to a good place, they leave, start over. So I think that's why toxic cycles are so damaging, because remember, they destroy intimacy and they prevent communication. So now you're in this toxic cycle, and the bummer is you can't even talk. You can't even talk about, the real problem, the real feelings. Everyone's so, triggered and oversensitive, hypersensitive, hyper aware. And so we're like two magnets. We can't get close, and we definitely cannot hear or talk about anything. So being in a toxic cycle, it's really hard to stay in it and get out of it. You have to be able to see it from the outside perspective, and that's what's going to allow you to exit. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need the other person to agree to exit with you. You just have to be the one to exit. It's kind of like if we're doing a couples dance and I refuse to dance, there's no couples dance, right? I'm just going to refuse to engage in that. And then by default, it doesn't happen. So, again, all of this is asking you just to start paying attention to when you're fighting or when you are arguing, when you're feeling that, impulse to leave, which of course that is one exit that your brain's going to come up with, right? Because if you've tried everything you knew to try and it's never getting better, then my only option is, well, then I'm just going to have to bounce. I'm just going to have to leave. And what does that look like? And you know what? Maybe you didn't need to. Maybe it's about learning about that cycle and overcoming it. But again, once you overcome it, if you find another toxic cycle and another one, then maybe that's going to help you make a decision if you need to leave or not, because maybe you do, right? So all of this comes from Have You Had Enough? How to Break It From Your Toxic Cycle. And again, you can find this on Amazon.com. You can also get the PDF from relationaltrauma101.podia.com. I'm going to leave both the links in the description. I hope you give this a try instead of just feeling defeated. And the other big thing is don't wait. Don't wait for another horrible fight. Don't wait for another, knockdown, drag out, meltdown. Do it now. you can just recall your last fight and you can pull so much good information from that that is so incredibly useful for you. So I really encourage you to do it today. Take action today and to not wait, because your next fight could be the last one. And if you don't want to lose that relationship, especially if it's a parent-child relationship, right? If you don't want to just shut yourself off, become cold and dead to that relationship, then there is hope. You can find information and you can learn how to deal with it in maybe a different way than you've ever dealt with it before. So go ahead, and I'm going to leave a video up here that's going to be for other useful tips and tricks for you to use. And other than that, I'm hoping that you have a good day, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Take good care.